All right. I think we're at the starting point, so I want to be respectful of time because I know you guys probably have some dinner plans. I think it was the last session of the day, so thank you everyone for joining. I hope Trio is very timely and pertinent for what you're looking to do. I certainly have a deck. It's about 30 slides. I would expect we'll get through the deck easily within 20-25 minutes. So a lot of time for Q&A. I want to make sure that you get all questions, any areas that you have in regards to running SLES for SAP, as well as S4HANA, and running SAP on SLES in pretty much any platform. So I'll talk a little bit about that topic. I didn't put SLES slides purposefully in here because I think the content and it's probably a lot more timely for what you're going to see in the whole conference. So I tried to provide a different take on it. But if there's any questions you have, feel free. That's what this is for. So we'll keep it informal. Raise your hand or blurt out when you got a question or comment, and or clarification if you see something incorrect. So the focus on this session today is going to be on a use case on AM General and how they implemented S4HANA on SLES. So we'll talk about their use case specifically. There's a lot of other use cases that I'll reference, again, as I mentioned, on multiple platforms. The example here shown today is going to be a private data center, yet we have many, many examples that are in cloud providers as well as in customers' data centers. So we can talk to the myriad of ways and scenarios that you can run SLES for SAP. And this is not just S4. It can include HANA. It can include the NetWeaver stack. So feel free. I want to make sure this is worth your time. So going into the objective here today, we're going to talk about, again, running SAP on SLES for SAP, that version of operating system specifically. What's the benefits for doing this? And we're going to focus primarily on the AM General use case. So I put the deck at the beginning. We're going to focus on their implementation, how they went about it, and also describe some other alternatives, including other migration types. So I'll ask a few questions there. So I hope that's a lively discussion and see what people are thinking about and what they're doing in their projects. And then lastly, I'll talk about just some advantages and things that we've seen for a good project plan up front. I'll show you some tools that we've developed that can help along that journey, as well as the SAP standard tools that are plentiful that you can use for planning and making good decisions. Usually that slide has my name on it. I slid past at the beginning, so maybe I should go back just to give you a proper reference. I'm Patrick Ostrauss. I'm Chief Technology Officer of Proterra. And I have just 2 slides. I won't bore you to tears on who Proterra is. I just want to give you context that we've been doing this for quite a long time, and just wanted to give you a basis for why we're here today to speak about this topic. So about Proterra, and I promise I think there's only 2 slides on this. This first slide is going to talk about our focus. And we started the business about 20 years ago, 21 exactly. And our focus for the first 20 years has been primarily around managed services, around running basis, you could think of that. So taking SAP systems, running them in a customer's data center, and then a private data center, might not be theirs, and a hosting provider, including ours. And then also moving into this cloud world that we're in now today. So we have a lot of experience of doing this for a long period of time, going back to the early 90s. And then also I want to talk to you about transformational success through what we call our FlexBridge platform. And this is focused primarily around the implementation and migration of going into public cloud, as well as transforming to S4HANA, HANA, and even doing the NetWeaver stack. So this is where it gets quite interesting because there's a myriad of ways that you can slice and dice these migrations and these projects. And so I'm hoping from you take away today any questions you have, an approach, things that you can do, maybe different approach on it. I'm hoping we can accomplish that and give you some new ideas. So I think this is the last slide on us. Like I said, since the 90s. Right now under management, under our AppCare Managed Services business, we have over 1,500 systems. And under our migration services with FlexBridge, we've done over 500 SAP migrations. So we got a lot of experience in the different scenarios, which we could consider brownfield approaches. And if you heard that term before, brownfield considers taking an existing SAP system and moving it and or upgrading it to transform it to a later version. The most complicated scenario, which we'll talk about today, is S4HANA. And we'll talk about the myriad amount of changes that are going to happen within that transformation. As I mentioned, been doing this back to 1998 when we started. The thing that we're very happy about is that we were the first company that actually assisted SAP to certify a cloud platform to run a production SAP system. So we were part of the team that helped certify infrastructure as a service in the cloud, and that was with AWS. So we have a long-standing partnership with AWS going back to 2011, before it was actually realized and certified as a platform. And then in the last 4 years, we've been actively working with Azure and Microsoft, and so we have a lot of great success stories there. So we're in a unique position that we've worked with multiple clouds, and we can provide very good, we hope, agnostic viewpoint on your project. And this last point here is a little delayed, so hopefully it doesn't move off that. This is, again, provided through our 2 lines of business, which is FlexBridge for migrations, that transformational success, and AppCare, which are managed services for running it after migration. So some of our earliest customers are up in the upper left corner. We focused, I live in Chicago. That's where we started Proterra. We have a keen focus on Wisconsin customers. So Rockwell Automation, Kohler, as well as Kimberly-Clark, you see on the top row. These are companies that we did their global rollouts back in the early 90s and mid-90s. And they're still continue to be customers, thankfully, of that. And then also a lot of different industries, global reach for companies, for running SAP. So very happy to report, and all of our customers, the 150 customers that are not shown here, but all of them are referenceable. So a lot of different applications, different versions. We actually have a company that still is running R3 version 3.1. And that company's actually we're helping them putting S4HANA as we speak. So they're making one of the biggest jumps you could possibly make going from version to version. So let's talk a little bit about the road to S4HANA and what this means. I mentioned before about this approach of brownfield, and there's also the greenfield approach, which means that you're going to do re-implementation or reinstallation. Just show of hands, do we have any greenfield implementations you've done or in process for SAP, for S4? Okay. What version are you putting in, if I may ask? Do you know, 1709, 1809? Yeah, it's probably 1709, I'm guessing, from the time that you would have implemented. 1809 was available as of October. And actually, the case study we're going to talk about today is a greenfield approach. It's an installation of S4HANA, installing the database of HANA, and then actually loading that data. So we like to consider that a data-centric migration or transformation. So that's the use case we're going to talk about just in a few slides with AM General, as well as the brownfield approach, which there's a lot of versions actually from SAP. I was quite shocked at how well this is supported still, as going back to systems that were built in the mid-2000s. It's compatible even back to SAP ERP6. So we'll talk about that road also and some implementations that have done that approach versus greenfield. So there's a lot of confusion on what this means on the data 2025. A lot of people think it means HANA, which is HANA is the database platform, which certainly you can install applications on top of, which are not just SAP. Yet when SAP talks about the 2025 date, the roadmap date, what they're really signifying is the S4HANA application. And S4HANA is, you can think of it as a brand new application versus R3. And it took me a little bit to figure out that S is the letter after R, and 3 is, the subsequent number of 3 is 4. So that's how SAP came up with the subsequent generation of the new application, S4HANA. So you can think of it as a completely different suite of an application. It only runs on a HANA database, and the transformation to go from an R3 system, or the ERP system, I should rather say, technically it's more accurate, to do that transformation, you're actually going to change and do a conversion of the database itself. And SAP has created these vast amount of tools that help support that path. So if it's a Unix operating system, or Linux, or Windows, even a mainframe or iSeries, those are all supported operating systems, as well as databases including Oracle, MaxDB, Sybase, SQL Server. They all can take the transformation in one step all the way to S4. So you can see that there's a lot of choice in the market, and how do you get ultimately to S4. So that's where we come in and make some recommendations on the path. So we see a lot of questions in customers on what is the best path forward. And it's, as many things in life, there's not one size that fits all, one path, but our responsibility is to best educate the customers and our partners of what path is best for each system, each environment. So you can see here, the premise we're in today is that SAP oftentimes is on-premise, the ERP systems, and this is focused primarily on ERP. Now there's a lot of other subsequent systems like CRM and BW, all these add-on systems that are going to be considered, should be considered as part of this, this transformation. But in this path, we're focusing on the ERP system specifically. So one path is to actually do a transformation into a new platform. This might be new hardware first. It might be transforming to another database, as well as making this move to HANA. So these are steps you can combine. If you're looking at going to a cloud platform in the future, you can combine that move to cloud and to SAP HANA at the same time. A lot of reasons why companies like this approach is that you can do this as a technical migration. And the meaning of that is the technical migration is more of a headache for just the technical team. You got to go through the testing of all the interfaces, making sure the operating system is compatible with all your interfaces and your backups are going to work sufficiently. You got your sizing properly done. So that technical migration, if done properly, does not affect your business teams. That's why we call it a technical migration. So it's the focus and the the responsibilities on the technical resources to do this migration. So that's why we see adoption of this, not just for the performance benefits, but you can get closer to SAP's roadmap, run with these newer operating systems, get great performance benefits, run also with some of the great tools that SAP's built with analytics that are compatible with SAP HANA. There's a very good application, SAP Cloud Analytics, which is a very low-cost solution that's provided as software as a service. And there's a lot of really great functionality that's provided as wizards once you have SAP HANA. So it's a very compelling reason just to go to that point. But when now you're going to talk about this S4HANA transformation, you're really putting in a new application. So there's a lot of considerations and additional safeguards you have to think about when you make that move. So what we're going to suggest as a best approach here is we encourage customers and partners to take a look at assessments and see what's out available in the market of learning about your current environment, what's going to take to go S4HANA. So there's some good tools out in the market SAP has. One's called the Business Scenario Review, a BSR. That actually is going to look at how you use your system in SAP, and it'll actually make a recommendation of what transactions that you've used it. So it'll give you a high-level view of transactions, like the functional areas that would be helpful to look at in S4, and some of the benefits, the use cases. There's also another feature, another tool called the Readiness Report that SAP provides. And that report provides, you run a few SAP corrections, you download the outputs from that, and you upload it into the SAP support portal. And from that, they'll give you a lot of usability statistics and recommendations of what it will look like for S4 and for HANA. So there's a lot of good recommended tools that we would guide a customer and a partner through. And I'll show you, at the end of the demonstration here, I'll show you a tool that we've developed that helps assist this assessment. Makes it very, very easy to take all the information that SAP's built and put it in one place so it's easy to access and provide a very clear path forward for your transformation. And the other nice idea I'd like to share with you is something of great value that we've seen that customers very much like is this idea around the rehearsal systems. And you may remember this name. It came into being with the ASAP methodology in the 90s. SAP had the term the dress rehearsal. And the idea behind that is you would get ready for your go live as a dress rehearsal for a play. And you would practice and get ready for your production system. And oftentimes that was brand new hardware. And so you'd be able to do your stress testing in that. With the cloud, we now have this really cool feature where we can quickly build temporary systems, we call rehearsal systems, and build those out and actually do the transformation very quickly. So it's changing the way we can approach transformation projects for SAP, making them more of an agile, more of a development project, more like a development project. So it's a very nice idea we'd like you to consider and when you're looking to go to S4 or for HANA. And I'll talk more about that with the demo. So this is the self-assessment. So I'll show some ways that you can do that. So does anyone want to read any big qualified restrictions, constraints that your company has against doing an S4 transformation, going to S4 or to HANA? Any big concerns or challenges you guys run into? We typically see about 4 areas. One of the big things is, first of all, the roadmap, and not so much confusion, but just what's the best path? What's the recommended way? Oftentimes we'll get a lot of questions around custom code. So you have this custom code that's been in your system for up to 20 years. A lot of changes, and how is that going to be compatible? What's all the work that's going to be needed to be able to affect and change that to be compatible in S4HANA? So that's a big question we always get. And then also specific for S4HANA, what does it mean when we're going to convert this system? We're going to transform that schema, that existing database and that application, and change all the data. So if you're familiar with S4HANA, one of the big changes that they have on the functional side is they're going to get rid of the master data tables for customers and also for vendors, and they combine them under business partners. So there's an opportunity here that we can optimize and improve the structure of that data. And I'll show you one of the tools that you can utilize for doing this. So a lot of questions around the configuration area of the business process, which SAP has created a tool set they call the simplification listing. So I'll also show you that. And then this third piece is a lot of especially recently, early on we were seeing S4, and this was a question around how do I take an existing central finance system and upgrade it to S4, or how do I take a business suite on a HANA system and take it to S4. Now we're seeing a lot more interest where a customer's saying, okay, we know that the public cloud's proven now. I want to move everything, and I want to see what are my options to do an S4 transformation at the same time. So it's become much more complicated, even in the last few months, where we've taken our assessments from just a landscape. Now we're talking about 10 landscapes on one move. So the management of that is hugely complicated. And lastly, it's just all the resources that are required, because you have system integrators, you have your customer center of excellence teams, you may have a hosting provider, and all the other third parties that are going to be part of this transformation project because they're so complicated. So how is that all managed? So I'll talk specifically on AM General and how they've gone about that with their project. That's the next piece. Any questions so far? So you probably don't know the name AM General. I didn't know them until we started talking to them, what they did, but you certainly know their products. And so hopefully you can see the U.S. Post Office van there that we've all at some point seen drive past our house. So they built those for many, many years for the U.S. government. And then you're also going to be familiar with the Humvees. And what's interesting is they actually, I'm not sure the years and when GM bought the brand per se for the consumer. I didn't get a picture of that one, but these are the military grade Humvees that I think that second picture is from Iraq, and then this is a current day photo. So they actually learned quite a bit, actually researching the company, that they make them not only for the U.S. government, but for our allies. So that's their main revenue stream. Founded in 1970, and they're located actually very close to our headquarters in South Bend, Indiana. One of the interesting components of this implementation was the ITAR compliance. I don't know if anyone has that same restriction or requirement. It makes supporting the systems much more rigid, and so that's another factor with the implementation that we had to consider. So very, very high level, what we're looking at for the actual migration, this is Greenfield, for the re-implementation is, this started about this time last year actually, mid-February, it kicked off. They had basically from end to end, it was 29 weeks. Their old environment was a R346C system. And so there's a couple drivers why they went Greenfield. The simplest one is that there is no migration path or brownfield approach to take it at that level. There's no R3 system that you can do a direct jump to S4. You actually can jump to Business Suite on HANA from that version, but not to S4 anymore. S4 requires at least 6.0, and even without any enhancement package, you can make one jump. So it's very, very nice. SAP's done a great job providing the tools to do that. So SAP's, the Greenfield, is we took it from R3, we re-implemented with 1709, and this is the process orchestrator, 7.5, as well as the customer switched off SAP GUI and now has implemented Fiori as the apps. Just show of hands, does anyone have Fiori running in their organization today? Okay, do you have it for HANA and S4, or either? Suite on HANA, okay. And yourself? Oh, Suite on HANA, good, excellent. So one of the big challenges with Fiori is to determine what apps you should turn on. It's still, there's right now, I think in 1809, there's about 1,100 apps that are available. Meaning, if you're not familiar with the app concept of Fiori, think of it as a tile on your mobile phone. And the mapping isn't one-to-one. It's not so much a transaction in SAP. What SAP's done, for example, with sales order processing, or order display, VA03, they have up to 6 Fiori apps just for that one screen. So they're much more granular, and what we see, most companies will want to turn them all on, which is practically not practical because there's so much work in the back end, and actually SAP's now changed up the authorizations where now there's front-end authorization. So you're always familiar with the authorizations that were required by SAP in the past. Now you actually have to add additional front-end authorization to do a display of the screen. So it's very important that you understand, or you have a tool that can do an analysis of what applications are turned on. So again, I'll show that also, is how to pull that data out. So this, as I mentioned about resources and the complexity of projects now, being that there's so many changing parts within these systems, this one had the Center of Excellence from AM General itself was part of the team. And actually, one thing that's very important I should mention is that one of the drivers that they went to S4 and re-implemented was they didn't have any native knowledge anymore of the application. It was built back in the 90s with consultants, and a lot of the team members have since moved on. And so they didn't have any more business knowledge of what the internals of SAP was. So that was one of the reasons why they chose Greenfield. If you have really strong native knowledge of how your applications work in those business processes in your companies, we're seeing a lot more adoption within the brownfield, within the upgrade path. So I should mention that's one of the reasons why it was chosen. So AM General's Center of Excellence team was part of it. Deloitte was the system integrator, so they did a lot of the functional work as well as the code remediation, which I'll show as the tools that are available for this. And then the data center, this is private data center, it's micro integration. It's a data center that's in Indiana, and again, it's ITAR compliant. So that was the partner we worked with. And then we provided the basis, the technical SAP expertise, as well as implementation services to get installed. And we do ongoing managed services through our app care, which I showed before. So I apologize, this is a little eye chart, so I will interpret this as best I can. What this is showing is on the very top, this is a landscape of 1709. So they have a development system, quality, and production. And you can see down here, you probably can't see it, it's way too small, but the operating system they're running as is SLUS for SAP. This is 12.1. If you can see that, you got incredible eyes. Why I say this is that now we have 12.4 available. There's a lot of great features that are now available in these newer versions, especially around system replication. So they are actually planning to do the patching. And as I mentioned, I didn't put the decks in specifically on SLUS and the options, but just from a very high level, what we see value in, I'd say there's 3 big categories, maybe 4, that we as a hosting provider, that we could recommend SLUS as a clear choice, not just for S4HANA, which they have clear the market share for running HANA, but even for NetWeaver. And so one of the coolest features, I don't know if you're aware of, and if you can get information if you haven't seen this, is called live patching. So there's a lot of the patches, security patches, that require a downtime today in other operating systems. And SLUS has enabled this where they can minimize that downtime on the operating system. And so you can put these patches in much more frequently. So best practices are usually every quarter to apply security patches. This helps enable this. So that's the first feature I would mention for SLUS specifically. The second one, and you could categorize these in 2 different features, but it's really the same topic. And I encourage you, if you have interest in this topic, do a Google search on SLUS and look for the term high availability or disaster recoverability. Disaster recovery. Those 2 terms, SLUS and SUSE has generically categorized as system replication, which is really the concept. And the idea around HA is what's called performance optimized system replication, where you have the synchronous changes. Works extremely well with HANA. And the other piece that is really cool, I'd say this third feature, is around there's a performance optimization and there's cost optimization. This cost optimization idea with high availability is it enables you, it's more for disaster recovery, that is an asynchronous replication. And what this provides you is you can have a system that is acting as your quality system right here. And this system is size, let's look here, it's 1 terabyte in size. So for example's sake, the production system is going to be 1 terabyte in size. Yep. So what we could do is as long as you have the resources on the storage to actually store that system and you could bring it down, SLUS has the capability where when there's a failure on this primary node for production, it will fail over to this server running quality and it will shut down quality. So it's not as fast as the performance optimized, which you can consider as true HA, but it gives you really good protection, and you save basically not having to buy an extra server, to add that pair always. So it's an incredible feature within SLES. It also provides you this the virtual IP capability. So if you're looking at system replication, I'd encourage you to talk to SLES at this show, because it's a really cool feature that I don't think many people know about the capabilities. And it's basically you could add DR for any landscape without additional hardware, just a little more storage. So it's a complicated topic, and I actually have a lot of slides that do the animation. So if you have some questions you want to talk more about, I'm happy to. We've done that for many, many companies, and it works flawlessly. Any questions? So in addition to that, and again, these are so small, I apologize. I had some screenshots. I wanted to get the information accurately represented. This one is on the process orchestration. This is actually running within HANA also. This is for all the interfaces of their system. So this was for the greenfield, the approach. This was actually where most of the work was done with the integration team to make sure all the interfaces from all the third-party products integrated properly, and they were tested. And we have HA set up for this landscape also, just like ERP. And as I mentioned before, Fiori. So Fiori's ultra critical. There is some interesting conversations in SAP as best practices today. There's a topic called embedded mode. And what embedded mode provides within HANA, or S4 specifically, is that you can run Fiori within the same server. So one of the things you should consider, if you're an architect, is perhaps you'll put the Fiori system into the HANA same server for cost optimization, because you're going to have this very great performance of HANA, and you can run Fiori, this server, within that. You can't see it, but it says this is running on Sybase, on SLES. So that's certainly an option that you can employ to separate them. This was SAP's best practice for many years, and now they've gone to accepting embedded just as well. So it becomes an exercise for the solution architects when they build that system, if they're going to put them all together or split them out. So I'll talk more about the tool set of how they employed for this implementation. The FlexBridge tool set, which I'll show, is applicable not only for the brownfield, which it was built for, but it's also applicable for greenfield. And I'll show you the differences. So depending upon which you're putting in HANA, S4, the use cases will differ a little bit, but the tool set's pretty much the same. Now I'll just spend a couple minutes going through the deck, and then I'll flip over to the demo. So if you have a really good memory, you'll remember these four problems that we're running into with customers. One is around the path forward. What should customers be considering when they're going to HANA and S4? And to answer that question, we have this intelligent assessment. So one of the answers that we provided customers the years of doing migrations is how best you analyze that environment. And our path that we used to take with a customer was a 2-week engagement. We would go on site, and we would create an Excel spreadsheet and find out the operating system versions, the database versions, find out all the application within SAP, all the interfaces, find out all the jobs. We would basically interrogate all the system owners and get a good idea what that system was doing. And then from that, we could create a plan for migration or implementation and use that. So what we decided when we heard the plans for SAP with all the migrations to HANA, we decided to take that idea of what we would build in a report and try to build it in software. So I'll show you how we do that here today with this feature we call the intelligent assessment. And this is what we use for AM General to determine, specifically for S4HANA, for the Fiori usage and for the sizing of those systems. Also, if you remember the concern about multiple teams and the work being assigned and what had to be all done for the project and the project plan itself, we have what's called the collaborative workbench, and you could even /workspace, and I'll show a demo of that. This is taking that work list that's generated for the S4HANA or HANA transformation and assigning it to your resources and having that collected in your project plan. And then if you remember about the rehearsal systems and how you're going to get to S4, the Agile development and this last feature, designed and built for the cloud, has hooks directly into both Azure and AWS to quickly provision and do the replication of systems. So we've seen very great interest around you would do your assessment, finding out what work has to be done, and your team wouldn't have to wait till the assessment is complete for the work to be completed for all of the work in the business process re-engineering. They could actually go through a migration and test the end state, have a system that you could prototype your custom code analysis and such against. And so this agile development provides a quick way you can prototype changes while you're still going through this project phase. So again, I'll show that piece. And this is probably gonna be hard for you to see, but what we have built the tool around for implementation and for migration is the activate methodology that SAP has provided. So if you remember the run SAP phase methodology back in the 90s, SAP's improved that and provides this path forward for how you can do implementation and migrations. So from a very high level, discover and prepare is your assessment phases. Discover is your technical discovery. So this is going to go through basically what you have today in your environment, and this is going to give you what we call your what-if scenarios. So it's very good in guiding the customer to understand what they have and what their path forward is going to be. If they're going to go to HANA, go to S4, if they have a cloud transformation, this basically will provide them that high level what's going to be needed from a project standpoint, resources, timing. Then specifically for S4 and HANA, we can go in a lot more detail and prepare. This is the functional assessment as well as the custom code recommendations. So we actually utilize, this would be very similar to the readiness report I mentioned before that SAP provides. Customers can certainly use that. We in fact actually can use that input that you generate for that report, and you put this in yourself. So we've actually got these two modules of the software to a point where it's self-service. So you can register yourself, or we'll send you an ID, you register your credentials, and then you can do these two assessments on your own. So this is, today it's only for ABOP systems, and it's more geared for ERP systems because that's where the complexity is, but we certainly could do BW or CRM if you're looking to transform those systems also. So I'll go through these in the demo very quickly instead of having to read off each line by piece. But before I jump in the demo, I just want to show you a very high level what we'll cover. And the idea on self-service is we want to make this really easy to consume and for you to get a report in your guidance. And so what we provide you is a custom ABOP code. You can download it right from the website. You run it on each ABOP system. We highly recommend every system of that landscape. And then from each system, you're going to get an ABOP extract, which is an XML file. You upload that into our website, and then you see the results within the website. And we also provide a PDF report. So this is, again, is your technical assessment. So from that, you get guidance. Okay, if you want to do an as-is or a copy in the cloud, that's your first option. Or if you want to do a technical migration to HANA, you certainly could do that. Or you could do the application transformation S4. And armed with that information, then, if you're going to HANA or S4, then you can dive deeper with Prepare. And again, same idea, self-service. So we'll give you the steps. You can generate this input yourself. You'd rely upon your basis resources to be able to do this because there's SAP corrections involved. If you run, as I mentioned, the SAP readiness report, you'll have those inputs already, and you can put them in. So, and we're happy also to help your team do this. So I'll show this in a few moments. And then I'll actually hold off on that piece. That's the assessment part, and then I'll flip back here when we get to the execution piece, because I think it'll make a little more sense. So as I mentioned, the tool set, you'll get an ID. We'll email you an invite, and you register yourself. We don't ever know your password for security, so you'll actually just get an invite with your user ID. You click on that, and you'll self-register and put your password in. So at this stage, as I mentioned with Discover, you're going to do the analysis on your own. So we're going to give you the instructions. You click here, you get the software. So actually, if you're familiar with co-file and data file, that's the transports. That's how you install SAP software. And then we give you instructions to simply run this. It roughly takes about 5 minutes per system. It runs very quickly. And then we can provide you an upload link. And it's probably hard to see here because it's like washed out, but you choose the file, you select it here as the XML file, you select your system type, and you select your system role and your system type. So it's all those are supported. Upon,
can I make one comment?
Please, of course.
If you Google Proterra assessment, it will take you right to the page you showed before, or the first hit is a link to that page.
And that's for registration. Thank you. So we have it right on our website. Thank you, Mr. Jeff, is my assistant on this presentation. Thank you. So yeah, it's easy as that. In the register and the email, we'll get it to our team to register you. So the next page I'm going to show you, it's not shown to customers or partners yet. This is actually where we generate the PDF. But what I wanted to show you just as an example is this is all self-automated. So we have all the details on the systems here, and we're actually going to download the report, and I'll show it to you real quick. So it's probably hard to see, but there's a download processing link here, and it'll pop up here in a moment. So it's taking this information from the text file. It's generating, going through the intelligence of like the sizing. It's going through any recommendations and if there's going to be an incompatibility. So it's looking at if your operating system is out of support. So just there it is. So well, let me just show you. It'll be easier. That's our Skyline in Chicago, if you haven't been there. That's one of our developers visited us years ago, and he wanted to commemorate his trip when we first built it. So this first section here, section 2, talks about your source environment. And these are from a very, very high level. If you're going to say, what are the things I have to worry about when I'm going to do an S4 conversion or implementation, these are like, we thought about this for years. What's the most important pieces? That's it, the first 9. So operating system, good, zoom tight. Operating system database, your SAP version, DMO compatibility. DMO is an awesome tool SAP has. It's called Database Migration Option. I don't know why they call it option, but that's the tool set. That is what does all the magic of going from Oracle to HANA or going from SQL Server to DB2. That tool set is what it is. So there is some compatibility that we found is not fully documented. So it's really important that we flag that right away. So that comes out in the report. Unicode is a really big deal. If you are not Unicode, you cannot go to S4HANA directly. So that's another big thing we had to flag. And then we look at the Java and the architecture, making sure that's supported. And then the central instance and central instance re-architecture, especially for public cloud, that has to be redone. And then also data volume management. So I should mention this assessment is complimentary. So you go out here, you're going to get a lot of information for free on your environment, just things that you can do tomorrow to optimize your current environment. So even if you're not looking to go to HANA, not looking to go to S4 immediately, you can take this report and go to the data volume management. And what we look at is we look at the top 100 tables. So this system is actually quite small. So there's only, we look at, this is above 30 gig, but there's 10 tables here approximately. And we don't look at just the sizing. What we actually do is we look at SAP's recommendation on this table and what you can do. So there's a few collections of the books and the notes where you should look in SAP to find this information. So we've done a lot of work. We store all the information, and then we give you the advice. So why is this important? Even if you're not going to HANA, if you're not going to S4, I mean, just to keep your systems clean, it's a good thing. But more importantly, if you're going to do a cloud migration, you could save a lot of space here with archiving. Even some, believe it or not, there's ones that they recommend you can truncate. It's really funny. This table even has deletion, so you can delete the data in it. So think of all the cost savings you can have, especially if you're going to do HANA, because the HANA appliance, they're still pretty costly, even in the cloud. So if you're going to save this is real dollar savings on your footprint. So that's complimentary in this report. I skipped over section 2. Let me actually go back just so you guys can see an example. So you're going to see some reds here. I think this one I saw some errors. So this one actually, it's red across the board, and the reason for that is this customer is running DB2, and the end of life was September 30th, 2017. So what that means is the system's still operating. It didn't stop, but they're no longer in support. And SAP is pretty good about it. If you have an SAP error, they'll still help you. The problem, though, is if there's a problem in the database, the response is going to be you have to patch it. You have to upgrade it. So we will look at all these scenarios and qualify what are the things that you have to consider on each type of migration. I'll also just show real quickly our very high level on the migration methodology. So again, I mentioned before around the agile approach, the system, basically just giving ideas of what we've seen as the best way to do an S4 transformation or HANA. So the project management involved, the different resource types, looking at, you could say, the high-level phases within the Activate methodology. So we provide that. And we provide actually, this report is actually it's for on-premise, it's for AWS, and for Azure. So we actually then will provide a very high-level approach for the clouds, as well as the target environment, what it's going to look like. So you'll see end state architecture and the sizing. So, of course, you can see SLES as a target. So that's all in the report. So from this report, we typically will engage with the customer, have a few meetings, they'll have a lot of questions, and then if it would be of interest to go to HANA, that's where we look at prepare. And again, this is a complementary report also. To generate this report, we use a few SAP corrections, and each one of these is a file. You won't be able to see it, but they're mostly Excel files. And then, let's see, there's an XML file here that's generated. XML is basically just a formatted text file, so you can actually see the contents. And so when we have these files, you literally just go same method. Take the file, and you take the file type, and we have instructions how you select this, and you hit upload. Every file you upload is going to now show up in the dashboard. And this dashboard now is very important for you to go to HANA or S4. One of the coolest things I really like is for implementations that are coming around a new version, one of the things that always happens is, should I go on 1809, the new version, or should I go to the old version, right? Well, we can actually tell you with this assessment, what is the distance? What's the difference? And it's part of the tool. You don't have to do extra work. You see if this is specific to your environment. The simplification items is the listing. It's the recipe to go to S4, what you have to do in your current environment. So it's looking at two places. It's looking at your system usage, and it's looking at your configuration. It's going to determine these reds. So in this example, there's 617 items that have to get remediated, that could be remediated in the universe of ERP checks for S4. This customer hit 105 of them. So what becomes important, and this in the good old days, or, as Billy Joel said, maybe they weren't always so good, is the SI was responsible for finding these things, these needles in the haystacks, and it was people's experience and just doing a lot of testing. Now the tools in SAP are so good, they're telling you where to look. And so armed with this information, we've actually had customers do their own transformations. So that's been our bigger shock. When we developed it, our first two customers that used the tool for brownfield, they did it on their own. So they have this listing. They can see it broken up by business unit. I'll detail one here. And they get a clear listing of what work has to get performed. So it's a little hard to see, especially in the back of the room, but what they're looking at specifically is by functional area. This is general ledger, the relevancy. It shows negative here, but it's essentially that's the strongest measurement of what's used in the system. And it's also checking the importance. So it's saying SAP's interpretation is they say, we checked it, you're using this functionality, and we think this is applicable to you. What's happening in this check is that SAP's changed the functionality of what's going to happen for this area. And what we then provide is the link for the steps to fix this in SAP's SAP support portal. So you'll see the note here. So this describes to the customer's Center of Excellence team, or if they have an SI involved, this is basically your blueprint of how you're going to fix this problem. So what happens is for each one of these steps, you would assign this work, and I'll show you that's the very next piece. So this is the identification with assessment of what work has to be performed. And just for sake of time, I'll just show you a very high level because we've got 15 minutes left. This is simplification items. This is your business process reengineering. The Fiori apps, this is, so for yourself, you could run, whoever has Fiori enabled, you could run this report, and this will tell you your hit list. You go back to your team and say, hey, I think we ran this assessment. I think we should actually turn on these other applications now, because we're seeing these are, in our system, a lot of people are still using SAP GUI for these transactions. So you'll see the hit list on top. It's sorted by priority. So you could take your top 5 and say, hey, we see this one here. This is 2 million hits over a 3-month period is our default time to check. This is sales order display, and here's the app, F1814, which it stands for Order to Cash Process Manager. So again, doesn't mean probably much to most people when you see that app for the first time. What we then provide is that link to describe what this app is. So this is SAP's documentation. We link right to the one that you can use as reference. And is that coming up? Here you go. It's just taking a little bit. It's going to tell you about the app itself. It should provide us a nice screenshot. Here it is. It's a little hard to see. But so you can say, okay, because start understanding what we're going to have to use for training to teach people how to use this. Oops. No, that didn't work too well. And the other thing that it does is it tells you the security auths that needs to be implemented. So it's very important for that. The other few pieces I'll quickly go through is the custom code analysis, which is vitally important for most implementations. So right here, this is, again, SAP's tools. It's called the ABOP Test Cockpit. This is a new iteration on a code inspection tool that was called Code Inspect that's been around for many years. And this will help you not only identify performance issues, and you can do this for HANA, for any SAP version, you can use this tool set. So again, you can use this and make assessments of improvements that you can do in your environment, even if you're not going to do a transformation in the next year or two. So you could look at opportunities how you can improve your code. Let me try to get a good example here. So the example here is a little more clear, is showing an example of this customer is selected S4HANA to go to, and hopefully you can see it here. This is the material master field is going from a character length of 18 to 40. So you'd have to update your code to be compatible for that. It's going to give you the listing. And this is by typical, we'll see at least a couple thousand objects. So this is, as you could say, the longest tent, the longest pole in the tent. A big effort. And that's why we like this rehearsal idea for building your S4HANA system immediately. You can use this tool, identify the listing of objects, and start hitting it immediately. And then the other tool I'd like to show you, because this is often overlooked, customers are going to take their customer data and their vendor data, and when it gets combined into business partners, they just take a one-for-one approach and they load it all in. What we provide as a tool is to do it actually a comparison of your customers over here and looking at your vendors. And is there a match that, for this example here, let's go over here actually. You can see in this vendor, we have 4 unique records. That is just one vendor. And we can match that up where we have this as a customer also. So we could take these 5 records in the system and actually put them down into one business partner. So we would provide that mapping and that capability to clean your system up with, in this case, a fifth of the data. It's probably not always going to be that efficient, but we provide a way to do a comparison on that data. And then lastly, this other piece I won't show in detail, but it's the KPI. So this is going to look at your business logic, and if there's areas that you can optimize that you want to fix before you do your migration. So for example, here is production orders that haven't been deleted yet. So fix that before you migrate, and then you'll save a lot of data that you don't have to move. So those 2 phases finish the assessment phase. The next 3 phases are all around execution. So I'll cover those real briefly. And that is, when you take this assessment, again, it's complementary, you'll have this work list then that you can now use for your migration. And from this, you have the work list as well as the project plan that is going to be applicable for an as-is migration, a technical transformation, or the S4 application transformation. So I'll show that next, as well as the realize phase, which actually does the performance of the migration itself. So the tools that we have called from the FlexBridge tool set some are SAPs and some are third parties that we use for replication for all these different types of migrations. Today, we Proterra run these steps. We're looking to release this as software as a service this year. So that's something that's coming. So you could do this for your migrations. And then lastly, the deploy phase is actually called the bookend. Explore is the prep step. Realize is the execution, and deploy is the post, the go live weekend. So I'll show those next real quick. So if you remember that the simplification work list that came up, and I showed basically the graph of business units and who gets assigned work, we can actually break those up now, and all this work is detailed again. You see that what work has to get performed. We can actually assign our resources right from here. So these are team members. Again, we can assign them the work, and we'll put dates on when it's due. So this rolls up into the project plan. So this becomes your way of managing the work that has to get performed for you to do that first cutover, for you to do the first transformation, I should say. So it has it for the simplification, has it for Fiori for that front end, and also for the custom code. Because this oftentimes becomes a very onerous process for your PMO group just to keep track of all the work that has to be performed. So identification and who's doing what, we put it all in the tool set. So you can actually think of this also providing the capability of a software as a service to provide this project management piece. So this is a default template plan. We would customize this for what comes out in the assessment. So that alone is quite a big effort when you're doing this the first time. You're trying to identify what the phases are and where the areas of risk. So that's part of the process. So once the prep steps is done and all the work lists are completed, then we actually can start then building systems. And so this example here, this account is hooked up into our Azure. So what we are able to do here is we can actually build systems if you have images already, or if you have on-premise systems, we can move those into Azure using the tool set. So this has credentials that are already set up. If you're not familiar with Azure, the concept is called a subscription. That's basically your account. And we have this as well as the credentials. So the application ID, authentication keys all stored here. And then we can actually navigate. And this is calling Azure for what the subscription is entitled to. So for your company, it could be just one region that you'd be restricted to, or maybe a couple if you have DR set up. And so I won't go through the whole thing. I'm happy to show this afterwards. But just to show, you can create a template. So this is making a call to the cloud right now and seeing what instances are available. We could select something very, very large. That's HANA. Let me just show, just for example's sake, because this is the next piece I want to demonstrate, just as part of this discussion, is the image. So we actually have Purpose of the Tux less version 12.4, which has all the great features of the system replication built in. You would use this image, and we have it also if you want to enable advanced monitoring and backup features. We have that as part of the image. So once you hit next, that system's built with all that already provisioned. Now, most likely, I'm probably going to hit a deployment error here. We'll see. I usually hit a quota. If you're familiar with the public cloud, oftentimes if you go over your demo usage, but we'll see, it'll come back. So that's if you want to provision new systems. And what I'm doing right now is that source environment, let's say it's in our existing data center, and now I'm going to move that existing ERP system into cloud. So let's say this is a prod copy. I'm not affecting our production environment at all. I just built this brand new HANA system to move our S4 rehearsal system into, and then I will actually now start the migration through this screen. So this will do the system copy into Azure. It will do the transformation of the data into HANA, as well as the upgrade into S4HANA. So all these pieces are actually done concurrently within this phase. So the way I'm going to select this, I could do a HANA migration or I could do S4. And again, this is sitting on top of SAP's tool sets like DMO. So we're not rewriting that. It's a wrapper essentially on top of it. Yeah.
So the last slide you had,
Yeah,
where
please.
It showed cloud. It showed,
Yeah, let me go back.
It showed HANA. It showed
Yeah.
S4HANA. So since cloud was to the left, does that mean that you had the option to just keep on-prem if you so chose?
So yeah, good question. Certainly, we have hooks in the VMware. If it's hypervisor as a target, let me make sure I go on the right account. Yeah, this one specifically, let me go back there just so we're clear on which option you're referring to. Is this one would be on-premise into Azure,
Okay.
this replication. Now, one of the things I could show you is we actually have the screen in a later stage. It's not the purpose really of the talk today, but I could show you this, that we use this also for creating on-demand DR. So you actually can create the replication to do DR in Azure, and you'd set that pair up through this tool. It's using the same replication tool set. We use for Azure ASR, Azure Site Recovery, to do that replication. So yeah, so that's doing. It's a great question. So that first one, the as is, it goes by a lot of terms. Lift and shift, as is, or cloud. You hear all those terms used. That's this first iteration.
Okay.
And then the second two are using DMO tools by SAP.
Okay, that's the DMO.
You got it. Yep. And there's a few other tools that we're releasing now. Actually, we're prototyping around their classic migration is the term that people use, but it's basically doing a parallel export import. So these can be used for AIX DB2, and they're transforming AIX into SLES AIX. There's a conversion that's done on the code page, so it's a different tool that you utilize for that. You're able to see this text here. It's for some reason it's showing it down below, but what I wanted to show here is this is the value of running through the whole tool set, because once you've done the discovery and we find out what system it is, we all have this information already. So you're just going to select this as your source. You don't have to enter this in. The software is going to be available to do this replication, and it's all automated for us to build that connection. And then we also have the target, which this one's running. It may have been one I just built, so we can use that as our replication as our target. And then lastly, let me see if I can find this really quickly, this is a template file that we will use. And this is what makes, basically it's our best practices of how we run these migrations. And you can, so once we have this available for, here it is a self-service. Basically all the hard work we've done over the years to compartmentalize and make sure this is an automated process is done through this file. So all the parameters that we use to run these migrations the most efficiently, we load up in that as a configuration, and then you hit next, and it actually starts the process to replicate this over to the target. And I'll see here real quick. I don't know if we have one running right this moment, but let me just check. Sometimes we actually have tests running, and you can see if we have an example that you can see as it's going. So this, again, it's sitting on top of DMO. So it's not loading the file here for some reason, but this one, it looks like it's in post-processing, actually. So that's an actual migration that's happening on our demo environment. So yeah, so that's sort of, from the standpoint of all the scenarios, greenfield, the tools, I'd highly recommend, the Fiori is an area that's an easy, if you have a HANA system today, you can use this, do the assessment, find out some quick wins on additional apps you can add. If you have HANA or S4 already, I'd highly recommend looking at the cloud analytics. It's an area I don't think most people know about. They have Lumira, which a lot of people knew more about with BobJ. This is, I think, a less expensive tool, and it's a lot more rich in functionality. So that's another area I would highly recommend if you don't know about those areas. And then for doing the assessment, as Jeff mentioned, Google that term, Proterra assessment. You'll see our website, and we can get you registered. Proterra.com. There you go. It's right. Yeah, it's right on the banner. Yeah. And actually, it's probably on our last slide here. So, yeah, and so happy to help you with any of the questions along the way, and anything I didn't cover with Greenfield on the EM General use case. Happy to go through any questions or SLES. So, and highly encourage you to look at the system replication options. That's a really cool way if you're not running DR today, a low cost effective way if you have SLES, or you're looking to do SLES. I highly encourage you to talk to the experts. And that's all I have, so thank you so much for everyone. Appreciate it.